People tell us every week that our information has helped save their life. If you agree that this is helpful information, please like, share, and most of all, subscribe, because nothing makes a channel like subscriptions.
I did a video on TMAO 3 or 4 years ago, trimethylamine oxide. Now, Nina Teichholz did her book, and then you got a couple of meta-analyses about saturated fat. It was like, okay, well, if saturated fat doesn't cause disease, maybe you still got disease and risk, and maybe it's coming from TMAO. You actually had some studies which looked at trimethylamine oxidate, TMAO, and looked at how it worked. There was another good study we're not going to quote today. Basically, it proved the gut biome actually had an impact in this space. But at the end of the day, it still did not cause significant risk unless you had kidney failure. But that's a different article. Let's go back to the topic of this article for today. It's in Atherosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology, August of last year. TMAO was linked to cardiovascular disease and thought to be present considerably in red meat. In this article, researchers included almost 4,000 adults, 65 or older, from the cardiovascular heart study. They followed them for 12.5 years, and the patients filled in a food frequency questionnaire. The authors evaluated the incidence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Now, you're going to be surprised, given what I keep saying on the results here. Total meat was associated with cardiovascular disease, 1.22 hazard ratio for total meat. TMAO was associated in up to 10.6%, between 1 and 114 in terms of proportion. The authors of that study believe that this supports the idea that higher meat intake is associated with cardiovascular disease, partly mediated by the microbiome. I don't. Here's a couple of reasons why. Low quality data, the associations are not cause and effect relationships, and they're tiny associations. 1.22 for total meat. 1 means 0 risk. And if you go back, you see here, you look at the statistics, and the statistics do go down as low as 1 and as high as 114. So when you see that huge of a spread, that's a major red flag from a science perspective. That study was, quote, underpowered, meaning they didn't have enough data to answer the specific question in the means that they were trying to answer it. Here's another issue. There's more TMAO in fish than there is in meat. So ask them how to explain that piece. FFQs are known for not being accurate. What's an FFQ? Food Frequency Questionnaire. You know, I remember back at Hopkins, deep into epidemiology, and there were a couple of things that we learned about food epidemiology. One was they're all done by history, and these histories are notoriously. And the reality is, it's 10:24 Eastern Time where I live, and I can remember what I had for breakfast today, but that's because I almost always have just about the same thing. I had a couple of boiled eggs that I made into deviled eggs, and a couple of links of sausage. Now, this is not about my breakfast. This is about memory. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, 3 days ago. I can't tell you what I had for dinner last night at this point in time. And these food frequency questionnaires really depend on people being able to remember all that, which they can't remember. So back to some of my comments about the overall epidemiology of food. The other thing that you realize is that it's not quite so much, eating and calories and carbs are much more of a quantity is a bigger issue there. But for exposures like these, if you had something twice a week and you had a bigger dose, a bigger helping, a bigger serving, you had 2 servings rather than 1, that really doesn't make a difference nearly so much as food frequency. In other words, food frequency, we're creatures of habit, especially in terms of food, and what matters is what's in your food habit, more so than how big your dose was. So that's why I don't believe that study. Again, that's a part of what we do on this channel, help people understand a little bit more about the evidence. causes. Now, I mentioned Nina Teicholz a few minutes ago, and she mentioned this in her book. The idea that TMAO causes heart disease and meat consumption is the main source has been proposed since 2011. Since 2015, Procter & Gamble has funded research on this, like the original paper we discussed. Now, why would they do that? I'm not going to get into that. More problems behind the study. Dariush Mazafarian, dean of the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University, created the Food Compass. It rated Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, and 70 branded name cereals higher on desirable food chain, food network, or food list than eggs and ground beef. Dean of Friedman School of Nutrition Sciences. So he's saying eat cereal, Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, and don't eat eggs or ground beef.